Right, I've got a very specific way of asking you about your coach, Locodoco, because I'm going to have to first set up some context for people, which is at the time, there barely were any coaches. That's why actually Monty coaching CLG even remotely was such a big deal, because there weren't real coaches. I mean, even when people would list someone, often it would just be like a manager or like someone who used to be a pro who's a friend of the team or something, you know, like at this time, Loco joining TSM was also a massive like blockbuster move. Like here's someone coming from Korea to join a Western team. If people don't know, it's a real story. He had the choice to join Alliance or TSM. He was briefly coaching Alliance first in Europe. So like he was actually a headhunted guy. People wanted this guy. And I know people now, this is the problem. You have to sort of explain Locodoco to explain this. But basically, even though people sort of now act like he was a joke, like a Mickey Mouse coach, he wasn't a real one. I always say this, even the way they diss him, actually low key shows they don't know the era amazing. Because you know when people say, all he did is just take things he heard from the Korean players and do it in the LCS. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? That's an insane advantage to have. A guy who can talk to all the Korean pros and actually bring what they're doing in the meta. That's not even a bad thing at the time. That would be OP as fuck. And then the other thing I'd also say as well is the problem Loco has, this is why he came off so badly in the Breaking Point documentary, why everyone thinks he wasn't a real coach. His problem was he did have good game knowledge and he had like an interesting mind for the game. It's just that personality wise, I've always said this, the reason I get along with Loco is because to me he's like my little brother, but the problem is like little brother vibe isn't the vibe for the coach, you know. So his main problem in general, as far as I can tell from talking to a lot of his teammates and players who played for him, is he just had a hard time like establishing himself as like the proper Korean coach, like the head coach figure, like the father figure. He was more like, you know, your fucking kid brother or something, which does make it weird if he's your coach. So give me some thoughts on working with Locodoco, because I feel like, look, I'm not going to say he was like the greatest coach ever, but I do think he's like maligned. Like people act like he did nothing. Like he was, at the time, he was doing something, right?
He was, I mean, in the beginning of the split, he was very, very helpful. Like whatever, like he was the sole coach in the beginning of the split too, right? Like when he came over, I think it was like week 3 or week 2 or week 3. He didn't even come over in the beginning. He came over week 3. So before that, we were entirely clueless. So within a short time period, he had to work with like obviously an import jungler who didn't really understand like the game at the highest level yet. Had a new support who really didn't understand anything. No offense to Gleep, but you know,
and had a lot of real life problems, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, and then he had to kind of manage that entire thing. And what he did was like he was actually able to entertain certain concepts that were pretty foreign to us at the time, right? Like the mainly around rotations, like from obviously mid to bottom order rotations, but mainly out of the individual things that were kind of like picked up by Koreans that were not really picked up in the West. How to maximize your flashes, like how to make sure that you can punish flash timers correctly. Like certain things that were obviously obvious at this point in time were not obvious quite then. And he had a lot of, I guess, like his own demons to battle with in the end, because like obviously people think about him as a kind of this party guy, whatever it is.
Yep.
But he didn't really have that acting out at all when I was there. I think until like I was basically at home for a week between playoffs and the split to do something with my visa, whatever it is, right? And yeah, he had a lot. He had a really weird, difficult team to work with, but he did a good job until the very end of the year, when it became kind of obvious that, as you said, like this dynamic between us and him was not quite working anymore. He was not able to establish authority every single time, and when he was saying things, they were not quite as researched as they were in the beginning of the split, right? So he did fall off a bit, but it wasn't like like in some kind of malicious party way or something like that. It was literally just, I mean, maybe just didn't really understand the workload that he had to get into, whatever it is, and I can't blame him for that. And Reggie also took quite over when he saw the team was not performing to his standards, which was getting to become the best team in North America and potentially one of the best teams in the world. Like Reggie just pushed him slightly out of position, I would say, and replaced him as the de facto head coach. And that must have been pretty difficult for him too at some point in time, because then obviously he was like not just, I guess, like the dynamic was already like kind of scuffed, but then at some point the dynamic was obviously different, established completely differently than it was intended to be. So I don't know, like he was able, like within seconds, because if I asked, hey, what does Dandy run on Jarvan, you know, I had it within seconds, right? What do they play in Korea? Where they play that? What did they do if Lee Sin and Lisa are out in Kazakhstan and Eva out? What did they do? Well, they just play that, and they think that's good. And he wasn't just connected in Korea, but he was also connected in Europe, where he was able to talk to Alliance members and was able to kind of connect us with them. And we kind of always had this flow of information no one had in the scene. And yes, it was a big fucking difference compared to all the other teams, because none of the teams understood the meta game, especially towards playoffs and towards Worlds, as early as we did. We just understood it better because of our Korean information. So that's what it is.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.